Happy learning.
Hi, welcome to our Pharma Topics channel. This series is related to pharmacopoeia, different types of pharmacopoeia, the different editions, what are the monographs included, and what are addendums and what are supplements. So you can, I have given a lot of MCQs in this, which will be very useful for you. So let us go into this series. First, let us see what is pharmacopoeia. Pharmacopoeia is derived from the Greek words pharmakon, which means a drug, and poio means to make. The objective of pharmacopoeia is to ensure uniformity in composition of the drugs, ensure its purity, potency, study the official preparations, and testing of drugs. The drug compendium, that is the information about drugs, are two types. One is official and non-official. The official drug compendiums are Indian Pharmacopoeia, British Pharmacopoeia, United States Pharmacopoeia, European Pharmacopoeia, Japanese Pharmacopoeia, etc. The non-official drug compendiums are Merckindex, Extra Pharmacopoeia, and other than this. All the pharmacopoeias, they contain monographs. Monographs, it is about the information about the drugs. It is about 10 subheadings. One is main title, synonym, chemical formula, category, dose, description, solubility, standards, identification, and test for purity. The addendum and supplements are issued for the pharmacopoeia. Addendum means added drugs, that is additional drugs, and supplements give updated information about the drugs. IP is published by the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission on behalf of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. It fulfills the requirements of Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940 and Rules 1945 thereunder. It is recognized as the official book of standards of drugs manufactured or marketed in India. IP contains a collection of authoritative procedures for analysis and specification of drugs for their identity, purity, and strength. Before independence, Bengal Pharmacopoeia was introduced, but till pre-independence, only British Pharmacopoeia was used in India. In 1948, Indian Pharmacopoeia Committee was framed for preparing Pharmacopoeia of India under the chairmanship of Dr. P.N. Ghosh. Dr. R.N. Chopra and 9 other members prepared the first edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia. I have given a table related to Indian Pharmacopoeia. It's a very important table. If you go through the information presented in this table, you can attend numerous multiple choice questions related to Indian Pharmacopoeia. It gives information about the edition, year, addendum, supplements, number of volumes, new monographs, and chairmanship. The first edition was launched in the year 1955. Supplement was launched in the year 1960. The number of volumes were 1. The new monographs were 986. It was launched under the chairmanship of Dr. P.N. Ghosh. The second edition was launched in the year 1966. Supplement was launched in 1975. The number of volumes were 1 and the new monographs were 890. Chairmanship of Dr. R. Mukherjee. The third edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was launched in the year 1985. It had two addendums, one in the year 1989 and one in the year 1991. The number of volumes were 2. The new monographs were 261. It was launched under the chairmanship of Dr. Nityanand. The fourth edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was launched in the year 1996. It had 3 addendums, addendum in 2000, 2002 and 2005. It had a veterinary supplement in the year 2000. The color of Indian Pharmacopoeia 4th edition was blue in color. The cover, totally there were 2 volumes. New monographs were 1149. It was under the same chairmanship of Dr. Nityanand. It was launched. The 5th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was launched in the year 2008. It had 1 addendum in the year 2008. The color, the number of volumes were 3 and the color outer cover was blue in color. The new monographs included were 271. It was launched under the chairmanship of Mr. Prasanna Hota and Mr. Naresh Dayal. 6th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was launched in the year 2010. It had one addendum in the year 2012. It had 3 volumes. The color was blue. New monographs were 52. The chairman was Mr. P.K. Pradhan. The 7th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was launched in the year 2014. It had uh, addendum in the year 2015, addendum in the year 2016. It had 4 volumes. The color was red. Number of volumes were 4. New monographs included were 577. It was launched under the chairmanship of Mr. Kesav Desiraju and Mr. Love Verma. The 8th edition was launched in the year 2018. It had 2 addendums, one in the year 2019 and one in the year 2021. It had 4 volumes. The outer cover was orange in color. The new monographs were 2020. It was launched under the chairmanship of C.K. Mishra. And the 9th edition was newly launched now in the year 2022. The outer cover was orange in color. It had 92 new monographs. It was launched under the chairmanship of current Union Health Minister of Health and Family Welfare, Dr. Mansukh Mandaviya. Let us see the multiple choice questions related to pharmacopoeia. The term pharmacopoeia comes from the Greek word you are given with the options cognostica, pharmakon, poiein and poia. And the answer is pharmakon and poia. The meaning of pharmacopoeia is dash or other standards required to make or prepare a drug. The options physical properties, chemical properties, biological properties or formula. The meaning of pharmacopoeia is formula or other standards required to make or prepare a drug. The term pharmacopoeia was first used in dash in a book or on drug standards printed in Bergamo, Italy. So it was 1580. It was first used in the book on drug standards printed in Bergamo, Italy. The first British Pharmacopoeia came into existence in the year 1864. In United States, the first pharmacopoeia was published in December dash both in English and in Latin. So it is 1820. The first international pharmacopoeia was published by UNO, UNESCO, WHO or UNICEF. It is WHO. The objective of first international pharmacopoeia was to avoid confusion by different national standards, to avoid confusion by different national strengths, to avoid confusion by different names or all. So it is the all, that is to avoid confusion by different national standards or national strengths, or to avoid confusion by different names. The first international pharmacopoeia was published is in the following years as volume 1 and volume 2, and they are 1951 it is volume 1 and 1955 it is volume 2. The government of India published the Indian Pharmacopoeia list in 1950, 51, 46 and 55. It is 1946. The Indian Pharmacopoeia list consists of dash monographs 150, 180, 200 or 250. It is 180 monographs. The first Indian Pharmacopoeial Codex was published in 1948, 51, 53 or 55. It is 1953. The first Indian Pharmaceutical Codex was published. The dash edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was compiled and published in the year 1955. I hope you would have guessed it is the first edition. A supplement to first edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in the year 48, 50, 56 and 60 and it is 1960. The second edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in the year 55, 60, 66 or 1975. The second edition was launched in 1966. A supplement to second edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in 55, 60, 1966 or 75. It is 1975. The third edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in the year 1966, 75, 85 or 1996. The third edition was launched in the year 1985. In which edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia the title monographs were given in Latin language? The options are first edition, second edition, third edition and fourth edition, and it is in the first edition Latin languages were used. In which edition IP titles of monographs have been changed from Latin to English? You're given with the option 1, 2 and 3 and 4. From the above you know that in Latin it is 1, and in the second edition it has been changed from Latin to English. In dash edition of IP, solubility is expressed in parts of solvent per unit part of solute. It is the second edition. The solubility is expressed in parts of solvent per unit of solute. Before publication of IP, which book was officially used for reference in pharmacy? It is British Pharmacopoeia. In dash edition of IP, new analytical techniques such as non-aqueous titrimetric and column chromatography have been included. You are given with the options 1, 2, 3 and 4th edition, and it is second edition. The non-aqueous titrimetric column chromatography have been included in the Indian Pharmacopoeia edition. Which edition of IP stated with the new heading usual strength in the monographs of tablets and injections? 1, 2 and 3, 4 are the options, and it is the second edition. They use the term usual strength. The Government of India constituted an 11-member Indian Pharmacopoeia Committee in dash for preparation of first pharmacopoeia. It is 1948. Who was the chairman of first Indian Pharmacopoeia Committee? I was given with the options Lieutenant Colonel R.N. Chopra, Dr. B.N. Ghosh, Dr. P.K. Pradhan, Dr. Naresh Dayal, and it is Dr. B.N. Ghosh. The Government of India reconstituted the Indian Pharmacopoeia Committee for the preparation of third edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia. So it is 1979. Which edition of IP included the new analytical techniques such as flame photometry, fluorimetry, electrophoresis, and photometric hemoglobinometry as official method for certain chemical assays? So the options are 2, 3, 4 and 5. So it is in the third edition, flame photometry, fluorimetry, electrophoresis like techniques have been included for certain chemical analysis. In which edition of IP, gas liquid chromatography has been recognized as an alternative method for the determination of alcohol concentration in various preparations? The options are 2, 3, 4 and 5. So it is the third edition. GLC has been introduced for the determination of alcohol concentration in various preparations. Which edition of IP introduced a dissolution test in case of certain tablets? The options are 2, 3, 4 and 5, and the answer is 3. In the third edition of IP, a dissolution test has been introduced. In the dash edition of IP, new appendix on water for pharmaceutical use has been introduced. The options are 2, 3, 4 and 5, and the answer is third edition. Water for pharmaceutical use has been introduced. The Government of India reconstituted the Indian Pharmacopoeia Committee for the preparation of fourth edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia. It is 1991. Government of India has constituted the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission (IPC) on 11th May 2004, 22nd March 2005, 22nd March 2006 or 10th April 2006. The answer is 22nd March 2005. The headquarters of Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission is situated at Mumbai, Delhi, Ghaziabad or Chennai. It is Ghaziabad, which is situated in Uttar Pradesh. The fourth edition of Pharmacopoeia was published in the year 95, 96, 98 or 2000. It is 1996. The computer generated structural formula have been introduced in the dash edition, 3rd, 4th, 5th or 6th. It is the 4th edition. Which edition of IP introduced IR and UV spectrophotometric tests for identification of drug substances as alternative tests to the classical chemical tests? The options are 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. It is the 4th edition. IR and UV spectrophotometric tests have been included. In the dash edition of IP, biological assay of insulin has been replaced by HPLC. The options are 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th. It is the 4th edition. The biological assay of insulin has been replaced by HPLC. A number of general monographs such as eye drops, eye ointments, nasal preparations, oral liquids, pessaries, suppositories have been included in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th edition of IP. It is the 4th edition of IP. The eye drops, eye ointments, nasal preparations, oral liquids, pessaries, suppositories have been included. The dash edition dropped the monographs for oral rehydration salts. ORS bicarbonate formula has been dropped due to its stability problem in this edition. The options are 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. It is the 4th edition. The addendum to the 3rd edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia were published in the following years: 1988, 1989, 1990, and 1991. And the answer is 1989 and 1991. The supplements to the 4th edition of Pharmacopoeia were published in the following years, except 2007. So the supplements were published in the year 2000, 2002, and 2005 for the 4th edition. Monographs of number of antiretroviral drugs and their formulations were introduced in the dash addendum of the 4th edition of IP. It is 2002 addendum of the 4th edition of IP. A new appendix on residual solvent has been incorporated in the dash addendum of the 4th edition of IP. It is 2002 IP. Residual solvent has been incorporated in the addendum. An appendix on HPLC has been replaced by a revised version covering ion chromatography in the dash addendum of 4th edition of IP. It is 2002 addendum. An appendix on HPLC has been replaced by ion chromatography. The 5th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in the year 2007. The 6th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in dash volumes. It is 3 volumes. The supplement to 5th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in the year 2007, 8, 9, or 10. It is 2008. The 7th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in dash volumes. It is 4. Monographs for vaccines and Immunosera for human use, herbs, herbal products, blood and blood-related products, biotechnology products, and veterinary products are given in separate sections in volume dash of the 5th edition of IP. It is volume 3 of the 5th edition of IP. The general notes, preface, the structure of IPC, introduction, and general chapters are mentioned in the volume dash of the 5th edition of IP. It is first volume of the 5th edition of IP. The general notes, preface, structure of IPC have been they have additional introduction and general chapters. The general monographs on drug substances, dosage forms, and pharmaceutical aids are mentioned in dash volume of the 5th edition of IP. It is second volume of the 5th edition of IP. General chemical tests for identification of have been almost eliminated, and more specific infrared and UV spectrophotometric tests have been given in dash edition of IP. 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the options, and it is the 5th edition. Almost most of the chemical tests are replaced by IR and UV spectrophotometric tests. The tests for pyrogen have been almost virtually eliminated from the dash edition of IP. It is the 5th edition. Pyrogen test has been replaced with bacterial endotoxin test. The 6th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in the year 2010. The supplement to 6th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in the year 2012. The dash edition of IP has 2000 monographs, 287 new monographs, and more than 600 monographs have been updated. It is the 6th edition. A new chapter of liposomal products is introduced, and a monograph of liposomal amphotericin B injection is included in the dash edition of IP. The options are 5, 6, 7, and 8, and the answer is 6th edition. The standards for new drugs and drugs used under national health programs were added in the dash edition of IP. Options are 5, 6, 7 and 8 and it is the 6th edition. The number of monographs of excipients, anti-cancer drugs, herbal products and antiretroviral drugs have been increased in dash edition of IP. The options are 5, 6, 7 and 8 and the answer is 6. The standards for new drugs and drugs used under national health programs were included in the edition 6. The 7th edition of IP was published in the year 2014. The supplements to 7th edition of IP were published in the following years. It is 2015 and 2016. The dash incorporates 2548 monographs of drugs, out of which 577 are new monographs consisting of excipients, dosage forms, herbal products, etc. So it is IP 2014. The standards for new drugs and drugs under national health programs were added in the 6th edition. In this volume of 7th edition of IP, 19 monographs on radiopharmaceuticals along with the chapter on radiopharmaceuticals have been added. It is volume 3. In this volume of 7th edition of IP, a separate volume of veterinary monographs have been added. It is volume 4. The 8th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia was published in dash year by IPC. It is 2018. The supplements to 8th edition of Indian Pharmacopoeia were published in the following years. It is 2019 and 2021. Indian Pharmacopoeia, the following Indian Pharmacopoeia was presented in 4 volumes with the DVD. It is 2018. New edition of 170 chemical monographs, 15 herbal monographs, 10 monographs on blood and blood related products, 6 monographs on biotechnology derived products, 3 monographs on radiopharmaceuticals, 2 on vaccines and Immunosera for human use, and 14 monographs on veterinary non-biologics were included in the dash edition of IP. It is 2018. In dash IP, 53 new fixed dose combinations monographs have been included, out of which 25 fixed dose combination monographs which are not available in any pharmacopoeia is IP 2018. The standards for new drugs and drugs used under national health programs were included in the 6th edition. The veterinary supplement is added to dash edition of IP in the year, that is 4th edition, which is launched in the year 2000. IP is published by dash on behalf of dash Indian Pharmacopoeia Committee, Government of India, Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, Government of India, Indian Pharmaceutical Committee, State Government, Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, Government of Uttar Pradesh. And the answer is Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, Government of India. Pharmacopoeia is an official publication prescribing standards for drugs, chemicals, formulations, identification tests, assays, or all of the above. It is all of the above: drugs, chemicals, formulations, identification tests, and assays. Apart from drugs, Pharmacopoeia also imparts information about food supplements. Second edition of IP was published under the chairmanship of Dr. B. Mukherjee. Third edition of IP was published under the chairmanship of Dr. Nityanand. Fourth edition of IP was published under the chairmanship of the same Dr. Nityanand. The 7th edition of IP was published under the chairmanship of Mr. Kesava Raju and Mr. Love Verma. The 8th edition of IP was published under the chairmanship of Mr. C.K. Mishra. The new edition of British Pharmacopoeia comes after every 5 years. The first USP was published in these languages: English and Latin both, or Mexican. It is English and Latin both. Who publishes IP? Pharmacy Council of India, state councils, state governments, or Ministry of Health and Family Welfare? It is Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Sixth edition of IP was published under the chairmanship of Mr. P.K. Pradhan. This is the nutshell of IP 2022, which is the ninth edition. It is launched under the chairmanship of Dr. Mansukh Mandavia, the Union Ministry for Health and Family Welfare. It has new monographs 92, new APIs 27. It had vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and fatty acids 21, herbs and herbal products, which are 2, vaccines and Immunosera 4, biotechnology derived therapeutic products 3, blood and blood related products 2, and general chapters 12. Apart from Indian Pharmacopoeia, India also has Ayurvedic Pharmacopoeia of India. It has two parts, part 1 and part 2. Seventh volume of part 1 was launched in the year 2008, which had 21 minerals and metals, and volume 3 of part 2 have been launched in the year 2010. So go through all the series related to TNMRB Pharmacist exam series in the Pharma Topics channel. TNMRB Pharmacist playlist is available. If you like this video, press the like button. Kindly subscribe to Pharma Topics channel. Kindly share this video to your friends and all the groups which you know who are going to write the exams. All the best for your exams and wish you a success. Thank you.